Hello, beloved listener. I am so excited to be here today with you. And I am switching things up. And I'm going to share with you why I am doing this solo episode, which is really all about tuning into your intuition and tuning into my intuition. It was really important to me to share a little bit about the backstory and reason why I've decided to shift the focus of my podcast. I'm so honored for all of you for your listening, being part of the You-est YOU community. We're about to celebrate 2 years. And as we head into this new year and really this new decade, 2020 is all about clarity and new vision and stepping forward into your own light and lighting up the way for others and getting focused. And I realized in really doing a lot of introspection and reflection that for me, focusing on intuition, which I'll define shortly, on my own intuition, on listening to that inner knowing and following that is the most important thing I can do. And I realized that's something I want to teach. I want to help you to unlock your own intuition. And what occurred to me is that this idea of being your You-est YOU, your highest self, your, expressing your divinity, your sacred gifts and skills and talents and unique brilliance, the gateway to your You-est YOU is your intuition, is your higher wisdom, your heart. And so when I was listening to mine and I was doing a lot of journaling and reflecting, I realized what I really want to be talking about and sharing about is people who have been listening and been guided by their intuition, their inner wisdom, so that it can help inspire and empower you to do the same. I just really feel and believe that when we are tuning in and connecting to that infinite universal intelligence, that higher aspect of ourselves that lives outside of the ego, outside of our mind, that I believe lives in our heart or in our that higher self, when we're listening and taking action, inspired action from that place, that produces a whole different life and experiences. And I just know from looking back at my own life, and I'll share some stories in a little bit, my life changed completely when I started to trust and honor and listen in and feel and acknowledge my intuition. As some of you might know, I did a lot of life in the people-pleasing lane. I was really good at doing whatever I thought you would want me to do, or what I thought was would get me the most amount of likes and um, support and friendships, and really just not listening to my own self because I wanted to be well liked and I wanted to fit in. And that worked for a certain amount of time until it didn't. And I started to look at my past and saw that once I started to wake up and listen and tune in and feel into my intuition, my life changed. And for me, it happened in a pretty powerful way. I'm actually working on my third book, baby, which is all about really going from being scared to living a life that is sacred and tuning into our intuition. So stay tuned. That is coming. Hopefully will be birthed this year in 2020. But I wanted to just share a little bit more about intuition and why this podcast is going to be shifting in that direction. So first, let me say that when I talk about intuition, we all probably have different definitions. For me, what I'm referring to as intuition could be thought of as heart wisdom and heart intelligence. For any of you who have gotten into heart math or want to learn more, I have interviewed and will be interviewing the founders, Debbie Rosman and Howard Martin, as well as the scientific brains behind heart math, Roland McCready. And all three of them are going to be talking about and sharing with you the science behind our heart wisdom, our heart intelligence. It's a real thing. So you could think of it as your higher heart, your heart wisdom. You could also think about it as your gut instinct or your higher self. Maybe it's that inner wisdom or inner knowing or higher wisdom or divine connection. Whatever words work for you is what you should use. The words I'll be using are probably in the realm of inner wisdom, inner knowing, higher self. So if those words don't work for you, just substitute whatever words are most of connectedness and workable for you. And that's with anything, with any of my interviews and shows. Please take what you like and leave the rest. So I'm actually going to do a quick energy clearing. And if you're watching this on YouTube, because I do record everything also on video, I'm going to be lighting what's called Palo Santo, and I just started lighting it right now. It's a beautiful type of wood that when you light it has a really lovely aroma and helps with clearing energy. You can also use a sage smudge stick. You could use a crystal. You could also just set the intention. But I'm just waving this around, getting this beautiful aromatic smoke to kind of clear the energy. And I'm just setting the intention for everyone tuning in for you to have your most powerful year yet. May 2020 be a year where you really start to dive in and tune in and trust your intuition, your inner knowing. And so we're going to talk about how to do that. I'm also going to share a few stories, and I'm going to share some ways that you can do that with me and give you a sense of what's to come this year, both with guests that I've lined up, and it will leave you with an intuitive message as well. So I'm just going to put my Palo Santo down. You can get that at Whole Foods. You can get that on Amazon. So it's just a really wonderful way to clear the energy. So, I think one of the things about intuition that's so important to understand is to really get that sense of where it's shown up in your life. And so one of the questions, I would ask you, and if you can't do this now, come back and, get your journal, paper, pen, type it out, write it on your phone. But I want to ask you this first question. I want to ask you, why do you feel that your intuition is important for you, for your life, for those around you, for the world? Like, why is it important? It's really important to connect to why intuition is so essential. So I'll share with you a story about my own intuition. I have many, many stories I've been tracking, and I'll teach you some ways to build your intuition muscle and faith in that inner knowing. For me, I ended up leaving my full-time job about 5 years ago. I had a really nice job. It was a really great corporate cushy day job. Nothing wrong. I liked it. But as you can hear, it didn't fulfill my purpose, my heart's desire to really make a big impact in the world. And so, for about 2 years, for me, my intuition shows up, and I'll ask you to start thinking about for you where you feel that or see that or hear that. For me, I get all three. Sometimes I hear it as a voice. Sometimes I get an image, and oftentimes I feel it. And I started to get this sense, this restlessness of like there's something more. And then I started to get these images of me working with people, especially women and also men, but mainly women, around really getting empowered and breaking free and tuning into their best self. I started getting images of that. And then I started to hear this kind of whisper, Julie, it's time to start your own venture. It's time to start coaching. It's time to start your own business. And what came up was fear. I had never done this before. I didn't know if I was an entrepreneur, if I could make it. I'd been in the corporate world over 20 years. Again, great job, paycheck every week. It was really kind of a, wait a minute, let me pause. It took me about 2 years. And finally, amazingly, I got to this point. I decided to find something positive every day at my job because I was starting to feel restless. And as I was looking for a learning or something positive every day, my intuition got louder, and I started to take notes what it was saying. I would breathe deeply, do a short meditation, and ask my heart, what is it you want me to know? What is it you would like to share? And I kept hearing, it's time to leap. It's time to fly. There are those that you're here to serve. And what happened was, over time, I started to build this faith in this intuition muscle, start to build it and listen to it and trust it. And it was a little over 5 years ago, I had, a couple coaching clients. That was really almost it. And I had a couple personal training clients, which I was doing at the time. And I had this very small part-time side job of doing health coaching. which I soon learned was not the best fit. So I left after not getting paid. But I can tell you when I gave my notice, I gave 3 months notice. And then I remember leaving, and the first day on my own, I decided to make it a day of self-love and self-care. And I went to one of these 24-hour spas, and I just immersed myself in water and journaled. And I hadn't made a dime yet. But what I heard my intuition say is, you are exactly where you're meant to be. And I just want to share that from that decision, this last 5+ years have been nothing short of miraculous. I started to hear this inner voice about writing a book. And as many of you know, now I have two and I'm on to my third. That first book, Get a PhD in You, opened doors that I could never have imagined. And what I want to share is that it's not that there wasn't some fear or some doubt or feelings of like, how do I do this? It's just that what happened is that my intuition and my honoring of it got so strong that, and it's still to this day, I still tune in every day. That's my most important practice. It's just that I learned to trust it and listen to it and take action. And that's why I want this podcast to focus on helping you to really tune into your inner wisdom, to help you unlock it. Because I do believe that your you-est you, to achieve that and to be that and to feel that and to live that, the gateway to that is your intuition. And I've seen it in my own life. And so that was one of my stories. I have so many stories about intuition. I definitely going to compile and put in my book and then share as we continue throughout this podcast journey together. But I want you to think about a story, a high point story or moment or experience where you had a gut instinct or a feeling or a sense or a knowing. Your intuition showed up. And I want you to think about and write down, what was it? What happened? What was that moment? What did you sense or hear or feel? So just take a moment and write that down. You can obviously come back to this if you're driving or at the gym or shopping. Then don't do it right now. Do it when you can get quiet. But think about what's been your beautiful sacred moment where you tuned into your intuition, where it showed up, where it served you. My belief is that this inner wisdom is always here to guide us to our highest good, always. It's always for the highest good of you and all those you're here to serve and to commune and connect with. And I've seen that in my own life. So just notice that high point moment or experience or time. And then you might even want to ask yourself, what was the lesson? What's the lesson that you can pull through? So for me, I'll share with you one of the darker moments in my life, which ended up being a powerful moment that led me to really taking a new course of a new road. I was married. I'm remarried now, but I was married for 11 years to a really great person. However, it just didn't feel like the best fit anymore. However, I had really stuffed that down. Honestly, as some of you know, I used and abused food. I binged. I ate in secret. I really use food as a way to block my feelings. I've also discovered that I'm an empath. And if you've listened to the interview with Dr. Judith Orloff, which I highly recommend, she is a leading expert on being an empath. We talked about this, that many of us who are empaths, we turn to food or alcohol or drugs or anything or shopping or sex or anything that gets us out of having to deal or feel with our feelings. And I turned to food, and it just allowed me to be blocked and to not have to feel this inner knowing, my intuition, until my intuition woke me up in the middle of the night. I had two children under the age of 2, and it was 3:33 in the morning, and which is a powerful number in itself for another time. And I woke up and I heard my body. I heard this inner voice say, "You're not okay here." And what I'll share with you really succinctly is that it was a scary and powerful moment all at the same time. My heart was racing. I thought I was having a heart attack. It actually was a panic attack. But what I remember, it was a full moon. I could see it through the window over my bed. And I sat up for about an hour and I just started to think and go within and reflect. And all of a sudden, all of these feelings started to come to the surface. And I realized that I had not been honoring my intuition. And I realized that I wanted to really make a change. I wanted to put down the food. I wanted to show up and to start trusting and listening. Now, this process didn't happen overnight. And honestly, it's not one I recommend, but for me, it was my truth. And just started to really gracefully and graciously to 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 both listen to my inner knowing, to leave that relationship in a way that was kind and as graceful and gracious as I could be. And it was not easy. It really did take a lot of courage to listen. However, I will share that it was one of those pivotal moments where I look back and I can see that that full-time faith and trust in my inner knowing led to a whole new vista for both me and my former husband. He is now remarried with 2 children. I'm remarried. Life is not, of course, always perfect and all roses. However, it's pretty miraculous and amazing. And I do feel since that moment when I decided to really listen, it has allowed me to just move into life from a place. Usually when I decide to listen to my intuition, because sometimes I don't choose to listen, but mostly I do. And when I do choose to live powerfully from this place, I can tell you that there's a lot more ease and joy and fun and abundance, and connection at an authentic level. So that's another story to share. I've got many more, but hopefully you're thinking for yourself. When has your intuition shown up? When has it been powerful? What's the lesson? So, I also want to share with you some tools and techniques and ways to really cultivate and hone in and to build that trust and faith in your intuition, your inner wisdom. Number one, the most important thing I would say is learning to get still. The fancy word is meditation, but really, my beloved friends, you can think of it as just being still, setting aside 10, 15 minutes, even if you start with 5 minutes of quiet. You could use guided, you could use a beautiful stream noise, or just silence. And you're going to drop down and just into your heart and start breathing a little bit slower in and out. And the idea is to just get in that space of what heart math calls heart coherence. Really, it's disengaging from your mind and allowing your breath to slow down and trying to be in that mindful state. Now, you're going to have thoughts, they're going to come and go. You're human. But if guided helps you, that's a great way to start. So, getting into that meditative state. And then, what I like to do after step two would be to do what I call intuitive writing. So get a journal, get a space where you can write, maybe on your phone or your laptop. Get a special place where you're going to write notes and you're going to journal. And this is where I like to ask myself, my higher self, my higher heart. I like to ask it big open questions, such as, I'll sometimes say, like, dear heart, what would you like me to know? How can I love myself more today? How can I be of greater service to myself in the world today? If there's a question or concern, I might ask, can you please shine some light? Can you give me some wisdom? Any question you have, you can ask it. And then what I invite you to do is just to write all that comes up. So again, this is not going to necessarily be coherent sentences. You don't need to be articulate. What you're doing is you're accessing a deeper knowing, not from your head, but from your heart, from your third eye, from wherever that shows up for you, that higher part of you that can just give you guidance. And what I want you to do is, after you feel like you've written enough, there's no right or wrong, but usually for me, I would say, it's at least 4 to 5, 6 minutes of writing. Sometimes it's 10 minutes, and I just write and write and write until I feel like there's nothing else to write. And I'll go back and I'll underline words. And usually as I get going towards the end is when a lot of the gems and wisdom comes out. And what you want to start doing is making that a practice every day. Because what happens is, like anything, when you start to, rehearse and practice, and you keep up that habit of tuning into your higher heart, of your inner wisdom, it becomes natural, it becomes part of what you do when you're faced with a question or a dilemma or concern. So that's number two. The third practice, and I love this one, and I actually have a place for you to share your evidence. So 3 is really tracking your evidence, keeping a list and tracking it. So whether that's something you want to manifest, whether that's a sign that you are looking for, it could be a sign whether to say yes or no. It could be a sign that you've established with, you could think of it as a beloved who's passed on, or your team of light, or in the angelic realm, your guardian angel, or just asking the universe for a sign. I've established signs with, for example, my grandfather who passed on. My grandpa Jerry, he was a really incredibly charismatic, loving entrepreneur, and I feel like he's with me and supports me and guides me. And so I created 3 signs. I have an anchor, a blue anchor, and then I just randomly chose a green apple and a zebra. So I'm sharing with you, it's a little random, but I will tell you, when I decided to create this sign, I will never forget this. I was at the gym listening to Laura Lynn Jackson, who is a renowned psychic medium, who, by the way, is going to be featured next week on my podcast. She's incredible. She's the author of Signs and the Light Between Us. She is a world-renowned psychic intuitive. And she was talking about establishing signs with your loved ones that have passed on. And I said, okay, all right, let's test this out. All right, Grandpa Jerry, let's do it. Green apple, zebra, anchor. So what you want to do is think of a sign that you would establish and pick things that are obscure, that are out there, right? It could also be a date, a number. For me, the number of when, the date of when he was born and when he transitioned, those are numbers I see often. So anyhow, finished up my workout, pulled out of the parking lot, kind of forgot about it. And no joke, right away I saw a truck. You guys are not even going to believe this. On the back and the side, all that I saw were green apples. I mean, like hundreds of green apples on this truck. I'm not even kidding. Right. And then I passed another car and there was an anchor. And then another car pulled in front of me on the way home. And it had his birthday, which was 11/20. And then about 1 minute later, there was another car and it said 7/10. He passed and transitioned on July 10th. So I can tell you, I'm getting chills thinking about it. I felt his presence, and it helps me to feel connected. Speaking of, 2 days later, when I was driving, I'm in the DC area, I was driving to a new client, and never go this way. I was passing the National Zoo, not thinking about it. And what do I see? The entire banners for the zoo. They have so many different animals, right? All of the banners were zebras. So I'm just sharing this. Again, you could think, oh, that's nice, Julie. That's just, coincidence. I see it as a beautiful synchronicity. And what's happened is, now that I keep track of this evidence, it really helps me to feel more of a connectedness and feel like I'm not alone and feel like I'm supported. So I want to share with you that I've also created a free Facebook community for all of us to share our evidence, to share synchronicities, to share what we're seeing, these clues, these moments where we feel this divine connection. And so you can join. It's free. Just search the You-est YOU community for soul seekers. Again, go to Facebook and just search the You-est YOU community for soul seekers. You will be welcomed with loving arms into a beautiful community. So many of you are already there, and we share, our evidence and what we're noticing, and we share resources and books. And it's just a way to create a positive space to really tune in and to start trusting your intuition, and to be with other like-minded soul seekers where we can raise our consciousness together. All right. So I've dropped a lot of information. I appreciate that you're still here with me. I want to also share, for those who might want to go a little deeper, I am going to be doing my Declare 4-week virtual course again. It's going to be in January, the first 4 Fridays of January. It's really designed as an intimate space with me. It'll be live and interactive to not just cultivate your intuition, but also looking at the laws of the universe, how to manifest, how to create declarations that work. If that interests you, please message me, or you can just go to juliereisler.com/declare. And there's still a few spots left. I'd love to have you if that speaks to you. And just know, if you would like to cultivate your intuition, if you want help with that, that is like my passion and purpose on this planet. you can always message me, find me. I would love to help you and talk to you further. All right, beloved soul seeker, I'm going to leave you with one more incredible story about intuition, and then I'm going to pull a card. This is a card for all of us. It is what I feel intuitively led is a message for all of us for 2020. But before that, I want to share with you something that happened to me this summer. It's really quite remarkable. And it just speaks to what happens when we become more awake and aware and trusting. So I was at the beach this summer with my family. If anyone knows the Rehoboth, Bethany, Delaware beach area, it's a really fun, cool kind of like strip of beaches. And we were staying at Bethany, but out in the evening in Rehoboth, which is just a lovely community. We were at Funland. My kids had a great time. On our way home, end of June, in the car, about 10:30 p.m., driving through the party beach area of Dewey. And something said to pay attention. So I've learned when I get that inner knowing or voice, I just listen. And I looked. And in this beach party area, people are out drinking, yelling, singing. And I look up and there's this electric advertising board, one where you would see something like 2-for-1 margaritas or Starboard specials, Coors and listing of beers. Well, I looked at this big, huge billboard, and all of a sudden, it totally went dark. And what happened next still gives me chills. The entire board switched over, and all that it said on there was "Call Ron" in big, big block letters. Now, for those of you who don't know, my father's name is Ron. And I really wish I had taken a picture, but I am telling you, I stared at this for about 20 seconds because it was right at the red light. And I just felt this incredible sense of connection, concern, and knowingness that my brain couldn't understand it, but I knew immediately that there was a higher intelligence connecting with me about my dad. So something said to me, look down at the odometer. So I looked down and the number was 18.00. And usually when I look at those numbers, they usually have like 18.43 or whatever it was, but it was 18.00. And I knew right away to pay attention. For those of you who know numerology or know anything about numbers, the number 18 signifies life. It actually means the tree of life. And for those who've studied that, 18 is a powerful number. And so immediately what came to me was, something is going on with my dad's life. Well, I kept driving and it was late. And I honestly did not want to call my dad so late. And then I forgot about it, got my kids to bed, and I got myself to bed. Anyhow, packing up, got in the car, leaving the next day from the beach to go home. And I get a call from my father. My dad calls and he sounds horrible. I almost couldn't hear him. And I said, Dad, are you okay? And then his wife got on the phone. And I said to her, I said, Tess, what is going on? I said, what happened? He doesn't sound good. And she said, Julie, last night your father was going to bed. He had a glass of water in his hand. This was about 10:30. And instead of going upstairs, he forgot to turn the light on. He opened the door. And instead of going upstairs, he went downstairs. But what happened was he did not see the step and he flew down 13 concrete stairs. My dad had broken open his head, the back of his head. He had so much blood. The EMT came immediately. He had over 20 stitches. He ruptured a artery in the back of his head. They were shocked that, thank God, he did not die from this fall. His glass shattered and he hurt his arm very badly. And what I found out is that this happened at 10:25. This was 5 minutes before I saw this sign. And I'm still moved. I'm still moved when I think about this today. My dad is thankfully doing really well today. He does have bouts of vertigo, but the reason I share this is I don't know if your intuition is going to lead you to this kind of knowing or these kinds of signs. But what I do know is that when we wake up, when we trust, when we're open, when we're asking, when we're aware, when we're willing to go into our heart and inner knowing and to live from that space, the gifts, the messages, the connections come. And I cannot explain how grateful I was for that knowingness and for that moment of feeling so loved by the universe and so supported. And I've had many, many other stories, but this one really stands out. And I encourage you to take note, to keep track, to really to start noting the evidence and share them in the community, share them with me. If you would like to share your story on this podcast, if you'd like to share it in the community, the You-est YOU community for soul seekers, please message me, let me know. Would love to feature you and your story. My aim is to help all of us wake up, to live from this higher space of our higher heart, and to really raise all of our consciousness. I do believe as we do that, it will shift the way we show up, the way that we are living our lives, and it will allow us to live from a place of love and compassion, and less so from fear and doubt. And that can change the world. So with that, I'm going to pick a card. What I'm doing is I am just grabbing, I have 33 cards that I created. It's called the You-est YOU declaration cards, and you can get them in my shop if interested. And or if you go to my website, if you decide that you want emails about the podcast or programs I'm doing, you can also get free copies of the cards. I give away 8 of them, but these were really created with a lot of love. I created them for myself, actually, so that I would have a way to just tune in every day intuitively to an intention, a word, and then a declaration. So I am going to shuffle these, and I have chosen a card. And oh my gosh, this is awesome. Okay. All right, beloved soul seekers, here's what we have. So the word that I've chosen, and if you're watching, I'm going to put it up so you can see. The word is joy. So here is the message for you for 2020. The word to focus on is joy. The declaration is simple. It's I am meant to be joyful, and I create joy for myself. Here are some of the questions to ask your You-est YOU. When was the last time I experienced joy? How did that feel in my body? Where and how can I add more joy right now? How can I share my joy with someone else? Okay, so here's what I'm getting. All right, so before this episode, I set a prayer and intention to be able to tap in and to share whatever was of the highest good for all of us. So joy is one of the most, in terms of the emotions on the emotional scale, meaning we all are made of energy. We all vibrate, right? We all have a vibration that has to do with what we're feeling and what we think about ourselves and what we're saying to ourselves. Joy is one of the highest emotions that you can have. And it's often one, especially for us big hearted high achievers, we often overlook it. I know for me, my programming has often been geared towards doing, being in action, producing, making sure that I'm being really productive and getting enough things done and checking off my checklist. But often joy is not in that space. So when we drop into joy, when we do things that are joyful, when we make that a priority, when we add that to our daily diet, so to speak, our lifestyle, what happens is you start to shift how you're vibrating. You start to shift how you're feeling. And how you're feeling is important because that's going to help you attract more of whatever you want. So I know for me, my word of the year is fun, because when I'm having fun, which by the way is talking about intuition, it's really fun for me, I drop into a place of joy. And so I just encourage and urge you to think about what brings you joy. How can you add more of that every single day? How can you prioritize that? And then notice what happens when you are more joyful. Track that too. Track what are you seeing and feeling and noticing? I'd love to hear from you how joy is adding impact and more light to your life. And the last thing I'll say about joy is it doesn't have to cost anything. It doesn't mean that you need to go and book an expensive vacation or, take yourself out to a fancy meal or spa date. Those are all lovely and fine, and go for it if you want to. But joy can be really simple. It can be staring into your children's eyes. It can be staring into your own eyes. It can be connecting with a dear friend. It could be looking into your lover's heart. It could be being in nature and seeing a butterfly and feeling just freaking grateful to be alive. Like, I encourage you to look for joy anywhere and everywhere you can and start to build that muscle along with your intuitive muscle. Well, I hope this has been enlightening. I hope this has been encouraging, inspiring, uplifting. And as always, I am here. I am so honored to be your host, to be here to help you usher in your best life and to actualize your You-est you. And I would love to hear from you, hear what's opening up. And I just thank you for your listening, for your open heartedness. And I know this is going to be such a powerful year, a year of clarity, of vision, of joy, of honoring your You-est you, your highest self, your inner knowing, your intuition. And as always, I'm just sending immense love, light, and blessings, and appreciate and acknowledge and honor your You-est you.